A neighborhood in Athens finally knows the truth about their well water, that it's contaminated with forever chemicals.
The Fox 5 I-team reported last week how this community tried for decades to get help from the government, but only got answers after a nonprofit tested the water. I-team reporter Johnny Edwards kept digging, asking how so many government experts, state and federal, got this one so wrong. Johnny?
Well, Courtney and Tom, part of it is they stopped looking. There were water tests done way back in 2003 when forever chemicals weren't on the government's radar. But we found more testing could have discovered the problem, and way sooner than 2024.
I stand before you today to share a story of tragedy and injustice.
A community in Athens suffering.
Most of the people now have passed away from cancer or, some other disease.
And let down badly by regulators charged with protecting them from toxic chemicals. Families off Pittard Road near a former carpet fibers plant blaming well water for cancers and deaths.
Right now I suffer prostate cancer. And I believe I got it then I drinking that water.
Yet, told by the government, based on water tests from 2003, they weren't being poisoned. They were, though, by a man-made chemical, per and polyfluoroalkyl substances, or PFAS, also known as forever chemicals. Used in, among other things, nonstick cookware, food wrapping, stain-resistant carpeting, and linked to several forms of cancer. Contamination now confirmed by the Federal Environmental Protection Agency.
They've been found at a level that is associated with a health risk.
The actual source still unknown.
This is my well.
The Fox 5 I-team learned this community, through a patch of woods from a former DuPont factory, could have been told the truth a whole lot sooner. Sure, forever chemicals weren't considered a major threat in 2003, and the EPA didn't have standards for water levels until this year.
The old analytical methods that were established over a decade ago, much of what's been discovered along Pittard Road, we would not have been able to get to that level of that small level of contamination.
But there was progress in between. Dr. Dana Boyd-Barr, a PFAS expert at Emory and formerly with the CDC, says regulators could have detected the chemicals as early as 2009.
They might not have been able to say if it was an unsafe level, but they could have said that we have this exposure that we shouldn't have.
This could have been and should have been addressed several years ago.
Instead, only this year did the city declare a public health emergency and spend $60,000 connecting 15 homes to public water. And only because Athens Mayor Kelly Gertz sought outside help from the Southern Environmental Law Center.
That, of course, led to some very strong evidence.
Evidence that confirmed families were drinking, bathing in, and cooking with toxic industrial chemicals.
Is that the way it ought to work?
No. I mean, that's the community and the public doing the agency's work.
One agency that shot down concerns about Pittard Road, the Federal Agency for Toxic Substances and Disease Registry. It's part of the CDC based right here in Atlanta, and it apparently relied on work done by the state health department.
And yet they make very broad, sweeping conclusions about risk.
Stephen Lester of the Virginia-based Center for Health, Environment, and Justice said he sees a regulatory breakdown on Pittard Road. He said when that 2006 report said no health hazard, no cancer cluster, it ended the search for truth. The report relied partly on those 2003 water tests done by the state. Apparently, those were the last tests done until this year.
ATSR is kind of a final word. And if ATSR says there's nothing to be concerned about here, then no government agency is going to take action.
An investigation this year by Reuters news agency charged ATSDR regularly downplays and disregards neighbors' health concerns, with its faulty reports used as cover by polluters. We reached out, but ATSDR referred us to the Georgia Department of Public Health, which told us testing for PFAS was not done in 2006. The analytical testing was not as developed as it is today. Neffy Davis's aunt, Glenda Crumley, died of breast cancer a year later in 2007.
My aunt was devastated. She was like, I mean, they got to do it again. They missed something. I know there's something here, but it never went anywhere.
EPA also tells us it's now investigating the source of the toxic chemicals. DuPont ran that plant from the 1970s until 2003, selling it to a spin-off company, Invista, which operated there until 2019. Both companies have told EPA they never used PFAS chemicals at the factory. As we reported last week, the plant is now owned by an entirely different company which does not make carpet fibers. Courtney, Tom?
And so did the EPA just take the company's word for it that it wasn't using the PFAS chemicals?
Well, it certainly looks that way, at least based on some emails I've seen going back and forth between an Athens-based environmental activist and the EPA. Incidentally, she was trying to get EPA to look into possible involvement of PFAS way back in 2010. The EPA showed them saying at the time, they say they don't have the chemicals, we don't think the water runs that way, and we're done.
How upsetting for the folks that live there and have to deal with all that, Don, you know?
Right. I mean, just to be told for all this time this is all in your heads, it's all you, and now to find out there really is a problem and there really is a health risk that they've been living with.
Very upsetting.
Wouldn't be the first time the government officials have misled people to think that some concerns they have are not valid.
Yeah.
So,
not at all.
unfortunate in this case. Johnny, thanks.
Thanks, Johnny.
Thank you.